Democracy by definition means the government by people. This means at an indeterminate time of the year some countries chose a member of the society to be represented and govern them. Capitalism is market economy, or free enterprise economy, economic system, dominant in the Western world since the breakup of feudalism, in which most of the means of production are privately owned, and production is guided and income distributed largely through the operation of markets. On the 4th of July of 1776, the United States of America are proclaimed independent of Great Britain, and this event has a very important influence on the other colonies that were tired to be under the power of other nations. 16th of September of 1810 the Mexico independence began pipe on September 16, 1810. A progressive priest named Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla became the father of Mexican independence with a historic proclamation urging his fellow Mexicans to take up arms against the Spanish government. In the 19th century, the market people that were in charge of the economy only thinks in the benefits of money and initiated a constantly violation of the workers' rights. French Revolution, 1789 to 1790, with the ascent of Napoleon Bonaparte. During this period, French citizens raised and redesigned their country's political landscape, uprooting centuries-old institutions such as absolute monarchy and the feudal system. 1806. Napoleon begins with a continental blockade to take over the world. That was the beginning of the first time that someone tries to conquer Europe and then the world. In this century, the development starts with the attempt to create a big and solid economy, but between the 18th and 19th century, a lot of revolts and wars occur, and this detracted the capitalism in Europe for a while. The frame of ideology, the forces and ideologies that animated the modern political history of the Middle East, from 19th century reforms and through much of the 20th century, were largely secular and nationalist. Islamic politics was always there, but only as part, often subordinate, of a wider political field. It was divided between reactionary conservatives, trying to maintain patriarchal and institutional privileges, like many of the traditional ulama, and more modern populist mobilization, typically that of the Muslim Brotherhood. Democracy in the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, the struggle for independence, and Turkish resistance against European imperialism. Students explore the birth of the Turkish Republic, the emergence of a multi-party democracy, the military coups of the 20th century, and the Kurdish conflict. The readings conclude by examining current issues in Turkey, including economic development, religion and secularism, human rights, authoritarianism, and foreign affairs. In a culminating simulation, students grapple with the questions and challenges facing people in Turkey today. Mohammed Fadl, the promise of democracy lies in its potential to cultivate political virtue over time. But Egypt's liberals, unnerved by the policies of the legitimate Muslim Brotherhood government, refused to wait. The history of the city dates back to the first millennium BC and has been known for its rich oil resources since 1873. Because of its petroleum wealth, the city is known as a black city, and by the beginning of the 20th century, almost half of the oil reserves in the world had been extracted in the area. It is the largest city in the country and located on the Caspian Sea. His son was a student of history and government at Princeton as well as well-read in law. He participated in the framing of the Virginia Constitution in 1776, served in the Continental Congress, and was a leader in the Virginia Assembly. When delegates to the Constitutional Convention assembled at Philadelphia, the 36-year-old Madison took frequent and emphatic part in the debates. 1812 to 1815, the War of 1812, the war between the United States and Britain led to a feeling of increased United States nationalism and increasing separateness from European affairs. The Americans lost the war, but won the negotiations at the end. James Madison is re-elected as president. Slavery in the Americas was central to the development of capitalism, both on an international level and also here in the United States. Throughout every step of the development of the United States up through 1860, slavery was integral, from the colonial period, through the American War of Independence, to the Constitution, and then culminating in the struggle that led up to the Civil War. The fall of East Asia passed through two phases. One, before Before 1800, when East Asia lost its developmental dynamics, became stagnant, and failed to develop further into industrial capitalism. 2. After 1800, when East Asia interacted with European. The 19th century Chinese labor subsidy to British and American capitalism, its relevance to the anthropology of migration. Liang Qichao, who was born in 1873 in a small southern village, not far from the Portuguese colony of Macau, died in 1929 after an intellectually tumultuous life. He wrestled continuously with the problem of how to reform China without destroying what he took to be its cultural essence, and without humiliating its people with cultural annihilation. Among Liang's formative political experiences was his participation in China's first student demonstration in 1895. The imperial government had just signed a humiliating peace treaty with Japan following China's defeat in the Sino-Japanese War. In response, 8,000 young Chinese scholars, who had come to Beijing to take the National Civil Service exams, signed the petition expressing their opposition to the treaty. They then formed a line 1/3 of a mile long in front of the Chaiyuan, the censorate of the Qing government, in protest. The 19th century was a critical point in the development of international capitalism, in Ikari 2007. For the African continent, this meant the production and commercialization of new export goods as well as the import of new commodities from different parts of the world. The international development of capitalism drove the demand for East African commodities, like ivory, copal and hides, sustained the plantation economy of Zanzibar and Pemba that employed slaves coming from the mainland, and permanently changed the terms of participation of East Africans to the world economy. The last great 9th century Algerian captain, Arkansas Rez, was a pure cable Berber. But in Algiers he was something of an exception. In any case, the democracy of the OCAC excluded native Algerians, and yet it also tended toward greater and greater independence from Turkey. The Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, is the oldest political party in Sudan, with origins dating from the first half of the 19th century, when the Khatmiya Sufi order was founded by Mohammed Osman al-Marghani.